Have you ever been caught in that sharp, burning moment when someone's words cut straight into you? The room feels heavy, every eye fixed on you, waiting, almost daring you to explode. Your heart races, your tongue sharpens, and in that split second, you feel the pull of anger calling you to strike back. I've stood in that place, and I've learned something the Stoics knew well. The loudest voice rarely wins. Noise fades, dignity lingers. Strength is not in shouting someone down, but in mastering the fire inside your own chest. The true warrior of the mind knows how to pause, how to let composure speak louder than rage, how to turn an insult into silence that exposes more about the other than about you. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the best answer to anger is intentional silence, and it's in that silence that wisdom sharpens into power. Today, we'll walk through 5 responses born of that wisdom, responses that don't just end conflict, but transform it. Stay with me, and you'll see how stillness itself can become your sharpest weapon. As we step into the first chapter of this journey, picture the moment when a sudden accusation strikes like a spear thrown in the dark. You're standing before others, your ideas laid bare, your effort and your pride carried in your voice. Then comes the blow, sharp, dismissive words that aim not to build, but to cut. In that moment, your blood rises, your breath quickens, and everything inside you screams to defend yourself. That is the battlefield of the mind. And the first lesson is simple. The strongest counter is not a blade, but curiosity. Now imagine this: a crowded room, a table scattered with notes and laptops, the smell of coffee clinging to the air. You've spent weeks preparing, gathering facts, shaping your argument carefully. Then, with no warning, a colleague interrupts, dismissing your work as completely out of touch with reality. The words hang heavy. Heat rushes to your face. Every instinct wants to fight back, to list every hour, every page of research, every name you consulted to prove your worth. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of meeting fire with fire, you answered with water? This is where Stoicism guides us. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." But silence can take many forms. Sometimes silence is not just the absence of words, it is the calm question that strips an attack of its venom. And so instead of exploding, you pause, steady yourself, and say, "I see your point. Can you help me understand your reasoning? Which specific aspects seem unrealistic to you?" In that pause, in that simple act of turning an insult into an inquiry, the ground shifts. Here's the truth most forget. People who attack with words often have nothing but words. They come prepared to clash, not to explain. They expect you to be wounded, defensive, tangled in proving yourself. But the moment you ask for clarity, you place the burden back on them. The critic who is quick to throw stones suddenly finds himself questioned about where those stones came from. Many stumble because their anger was born of impulse, not reason. I once lived this. The meeting fell silent after my question. All eyes turned, not to me, but to the one who had accused. He stammered, searched for details, and then admitted that he hadn't even read the proposal fully. He was reacting from a feeling, not from knowledge. The silence of the room grew heavier, not on my shoulders, but on his, and I walked away with my dignity untouched. That is the weight of a question asked with composure. That is the quiet sword of curiosity. Epictetus reminded us, "We suffer not from events, but from our judgment about them." The judgment of others can pierce you only if you accept it blindly. By asking for their reasoning, you force the light of reason onto what was meant to stay in the shadows. Sometimes you'll find nothing but ignorance there. Other times you may discover that beneath their harsh delivery lies a truth worth hearing, and in those rare moments your humility allows growth, while their aggression dissolves. Either way, you win, because you chose mastery of yourself. But let's pause here. Why does this response carry such power? Because it shifts the game. In every confrontation, there are two possible roles: the attacker and the defender. If you defend, you accept their frame, their rules, their battleground. But if you ask a question, you seize control. You are no longer the one proving, you are the one probing. They must now move from emotion to reason. And reason is a ground where Stoicism thrives. Socrates, whom the Stoics admired deeply, called this the truest wisdom, knowing that you know nothing. To embody that is not weakness, it is strength. You stand open, willing to learn, but unshaken if the other has nothing to teach. You're no longer an easy target. You have become the mirror in which they must see themselves. And often they don't like what they see. Let's step back and think of the larger lesson. When someone mocks your work, your character, or your choices, the instinct is to swing back. But anger narrows you. It blinds you to options. Curiosity widens you. It creates space, room to breathe, room for the truth to reveal itself. And when spoken genuinely, not sarcastically, not with hidden knives, curiosity disarms even the sharpest tongue. A simple "help me understand" can turn a storm into a whisper. But a warning must be heard. Tone is everything. If your words drip with mockery, if your question is a weapon disguised as curiosity, it fails. The Stoic way is sincerity. You must sound as though you truly seek to learn. That humility is the shield. That calmness is the force. Without it, the method collapses. But with it, you rise above the clash, untouchable. This is not theory alone. Think of every group setting you've been in, meetings, family dinners, public debates. When someone criticizes vaguely, everyone watches for the reaction. If you explode, you confirm the critic's story. If you retreat, you appear defeated. But if you calmly ask for reasoning, the spotlight shifts. Now the critic must stand naked in reason's light, while you stand composed. And in that shift, dignity is yours. Here is the deeper philosophy. You cannot control another's attack. You cannot control their tone, their choice of words, their intent. But you can always control the gait of your own mouth, the rhythm of your own breath, the choice of your next move. That choice, to answer not with rage, but with calm inquiry, is the art of Stoicism. It is not about suppressing emotion, it is about mastering it. It is about being the mountain unmoved, while storms crash at its base. So let's tie this together. The first smart response is not a weapon meant to wound. It is a mirror. A mirror that reflects the emptiness of careless criticism or the hidden truth beneath sharp words. It is a practice of humility that protects your dignity while revealing theirs. And most of all, it keeps you in command, not of them, but of yourself. Remember this image, the room growing quiet, the critic fumbling, the others watching in silence. You said no insult, you raised no voice, yet you walked away stronger. That is the essence of Stoic power. Not victory through domination, but victory through restraint. Not silencing others by force, but letting their own words undo themselves. From here, the journey continues. Because sometimes the critic does have a point, and when that happens, the next response demands something even rarer: strategic surrender. And that is where we step next. Moving into the second chapter of this path, imagine the air in a room turning heavy, as if the walls themselves lean closer to hear what will happen next. A client's words cut through the silence like steel. Your team has missed the deadline again. This is becoming a serious pattern. You feel the weight of eyes on you, your own people waiting, the critic across the table waiting too. The instinct rises like fire: defend, explain, justify. Yet the Stoic within whispers another choice. Sometimes the fastest way to win is to surrender strategically. Now, pause with me here. How often do we waste our energy building walls of excuses? Every stone laid in defense only proves we fear collapse. And yet, when you drop the shield, when you look into the storm and say with steady voice, "You're right, and here's what I'll do," the storm itself begins to dissolve. It is a paradox of power. The very act of conceding becomes the act of conquering. I lived this in a moment I will not forget. 6 months into a project, tension had ripened into frustration. The client, in front of my entire team, declared their loss of confidence. My people expected me to rehearse the usual song, delays explained, technical hurdles listed, reasons stacked high enough to justify the cracks. But excuses are weak currency. They buy you nothing but suspicion. And so I turned away from the urge to defend. I met the critic's gaze and answered differently. "You're absolutely right. Here's what I'm going to do. A new tracking system begins this week. Progress reports every Friday. And for this project, I will personally take responsibility until the end." The shift was immediate, like night breaking into morning. Shoulders unclenched, voices softened. The client, who had come ready to argue, began instead to collaborate. Accusation became partnership. The critic became ally. All because I had chosen not to fight, but to own. Here is the Stoic lesson. Epictetus warned us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In that moment, I did not speak of values. I showed them. To take responsibility is not weakness. It is the very strength that commands respect. A man who hides behind reasons clings to pride. A man who accepts the truth and acts upon it commands the room. Dignity is not in perfection, but in ownership. Think of the psychology at play. Most people rehearse a fight before they speak to you. They expect walls, counterattacks, excuses, gratitude tears that script apart and resolve it. When you choose the second without hesitation, they lose the thrill of battle and gain something greater: trust. They may not admire your mistake, but they will respect your courage to face it. And respect, once earned, weighs more than pride defended. But here lies a warning. This response is not a blanket you throw over every fire. If the attack is unjust, if the accusation is baseless, surrendering would betray yourself. Stoicism does not teach submission to falsehood. It teaches alignment with truth. Only when the criticism is real, when you know the wound exists, do you turn it into an opening for growth. Seneca reminded us, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. The end of denial is the beginning of respect. Picture again the scene. The client had come to prove us incapable. Instead, the act of concession stripped away their weapon. There was nothing left to argue. The battle dissolved before it began. What remained was not animosity, but shared purpose. That is the power of strategic surrender. It removes the very soil in which conflict grows. You turn the field of war into a field of work. Consider how rare this is in our age. So many defend, so few own, so many justify, so few commit. But every time you stand and say, yes, that was my failure, Here is my plan to fix it. You rise higher than those who waste their breath in denial. You prove that your ego bows to truth, and your strength serves progress. And people remember. They may forget your mistake, but they never forget your courage in facing it. Now carry this into your own life. Think of the moments when you were accused. Did you resist with excuses? Did you burn energy proving instead of improving? Or could you, next time, choose the Stoic path? Drop the armor, admit the fault, act swiftly. It is not the easy road. It costs pride, but it buys something richer: credibility. People may doubt your work once. They will not doubt your character twice. The ancients knew this well. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor, wrote daily reminders to himself of his flaws, his failings, and the constant work of repair. The most powerful man in Rome bowed not to others, but to truth. And in that bow, his greatness grew. True respect does not rise from pretending perfection. It rises from standing firm in imperfection and still choosing to act with honor. So let this response be a weapon in your hand, not a sword drawn in anger, but a key that unlocks collaboration. When the critic comes, when the flaw is real, speak the words calmly. You're right. Here's my plan. Watch how swiftly the ground changes beneath your feet. The battle ends before it begins, and the respect you earn will outlast the moment. At this stage, the path takes a turn. Because not every attack is just. Not every critic honest. Some speak only to provoke, to draw you down into their pettiness. And when that happens, a new kind of response is required. One that turns their insult into their own undoing. And that is where we now go. Advancing to the third chapter of our journey, picture a crowded dinner table, silverware clinking, conversation flowing, the air warm with laughter. Then suddenly, a single sentence drops like cold iron into the room. A man leans back, smirks, and says to a woman who has built her craft for over a decade, "Freelancing must be nice." Basically getting paid to play around on a computer all day without any real responsibility. The sting cuts the air. Everyone feels it. It was meant to provoke. Now, imagine the moment stretching long. The table waits for her reaction. She could have met it with fire, thrown back her list of clients, her endless hours, her record of success. She could have risen in defense, teeth bared, but she didn't. She smiled. She looked at him with steady eyes and said, "That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of that?" Silence followed, and in that silence, the power shifted. Here's where the Stoic path reveals itself. The most elegant way to silence someone is not by crushing them with louder words. It is to let them reveal themselves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." She embodied that. Calm curiosity, composure dressed as humility. And in that calm, the man stumbled. His smirk faltered. He tried to string words together. "Well, it seems like." But the more he spoke, the more hollow he sounded. Finally, he confessed the truth. "I guess I don't really know what freelance design work involves." And in that moment, the table saw clearly who carried substance and who carried only noise. This is the secret. You hand them the rope, and they tie the knot themselves. You do not need sarcasm. You do not need venom. Your strength is in your tone, steady and curious, as if you truly wish to learn. That is the blade hidden inside the question. Because what they expect is anger. What they prepare for is resistance. But when you answer with curiosity, they must step into reason, and most insults cannot survive reason's light. From here, let's step deeper. Why does this work so profoundly? because it does not merely defend you, it unmasks them. People who throw provocations rarely pause to examine their own motives. They act from impulse, from envy, from prejudice. They lash out without thought. But when you turn their words back to them with a gentle, "What made you think of that?" you force them to stop, to examine, to justify. And often there is nothing there, just air, just insecurity. I have watched this unfold beyond the dinner table, at offices, in family gatherings, in public debates. A sharp comment fired, meant to humiliate. A calm response given, meant not to win, but to reveal. And always the room tilts toward the one who stayed composed. The dignity becomes visible, undeniable. Everyone sees it, everyone feels it. But a word of caution: your tone is everything. Delivered with mockery, it becomes an attack. Spoken with genuine calm, it becomes a mirror. You must truly sound curious. The Stoic way is not theater, it is alignment. Seneca said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." The same holds here. If you are half in curiosity and half in contempt, you are nowhere. Be fully sincere. Let your stillness do the work. Let their words undo themselves. At this stage, ask yourself, how many times have you been dragged down by petty words, forced to fight battles that never needed to be fought? How many hours of energy wasted proving yourself to people who never cared for truth? This response liberates you. It says, "I will not fight in the mud. I will remain here, calm, steady, unshaken. If you wish to reveal your ignorance, you may. I will not stop you, and there is more." Sometimes this question draws out not only ignorance, but also reflection. The person who insulted you may hear their own emptiness in the sound of their words, and, embarrassed, soften. They may even apologize. If not, they often double down, exposing themselves further. Either way, you win. Either way, you stay untouchable. Remember this: true elegance is not in the sharpest reply. It is in the reply that requires no defense. The one that leaves others reflecting, not you explaining. That is why this response belongs in every setting. In meetings, it dismantles arrogance. In family circles, it dissolves casual cruelty. In friendships, it reveals who is sincere and who is not. It is universal because human arrogance is universal, and curiosity, when used with composure, is the antidote. So the next time you hear the jab, the sneer, the casual attempt to belittle, pause, breathe, look them in the eye, and simply say, "That's an interesting perspective. What made you think of it?" You may find the silence that follows louder than any insult. This is Stoic power. It is not to meet every attack with equal force. It is to remain yourself when others try to make you someone else. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In this, you prove it. You remain in command of yourself, and in doing so, you command the respect of everyone watching." If you've stayed with me this far, let me ask you, what do you think of this response? Type a simple "curious" in the comments. It may spark a reflection for you and for others walking the same path. And if this kind of wisdom speaks to you, subscribe to keep walking deeper with me into the strength the Stoics carried. Because from here, we move forward. Not every attack deserves curiosity. Some carry genuine weight, but are delivered harshly. That is where gratitude becomes the sharper blade. And that is where our fourth response begins. Here's where the path takes a surprising turn. Imagine the sting of words hurled at you, not in whispers, but in shouts, sharp as stones. A neighbor storms across the yard, his voice hard, his anger spilling into the air. Your dog is driving the whole neighborhood crazy. He barks non-stop from 6 in the morning until you get home. Some of us are thinking of calling animal control. His face burns with frustration, his words hammer against you. In that moment, every nerve begs to defend, to argue, to explain. Yet the Stoic knows nothing disarms hostility quite like unexpected gratitude. Now imagine the pause before you answer. Your breath steadies, your shoulders lower. Instead of fire, you let water flow. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I had no idea this was happening, and I'm glad you felt comfortable enough to tell me directly rather than letting the frustration build up. The shift is immediate. The storm breaks. His posture softens, his tone lowers, and suddenly you are not enemies locked in battle. You are two people facing a problem together. This is the hidden power of gratitude. It is not a weakness, but a weapon forged in humility. Seneca once wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you respond with appreciation, you end the cycle of attack and begin the work of cooperation. You transform the energy of anger into the soil where solutions can grow. What began as confrontation becomes conversation. From here, let's look closer. Why does this response strike so deeply? Because people rehearse conflict in their heads. Your neighbor, your critic, your colleague, they come to you already expecting excuses, counterattacks, maybe even insults. They arrive armored for war. But when you answer with gratitude, their script collapses. Their armor falls to the ground, and without it, they can no longer fight the way they intended. You force them to step into a new role, one they had not prepared for. They must either soften and join you, or look foolish, pressing a battle you refuse to fight. I lived this truth with that neighbor. What began with shouting ended in shared understanding. He offered advice about dog training, shared stories of his own pets, even recommended a local trainer who had helped his sister. Before the night ended, we exchanged numbers so he could let me know if the barking continued. An adversary became an ally, and the only thing that changed was my response. Gratitude shifted the entire dynamic. At this stage, the Stoic lesson grows clearer. Anger is often a mask for powerlessness. The one who yells is often the one who feels unheard. By thanking them sincerely, even if their delivery is harsh, you tell them their voice matters. You acknowledge their concern without lowering yourself into the mud of their tone. You step aside from their battlefield and leave them swinging at shadows. That acknowledgement alone can be enough to calm the storm, but here is a crucial distinction. This response is not for every battle. It is for the moments when the concern is real, but the delivery is poor. When someone is genuinely pointing out a problem, yet does so clumsily, rudely, even cruelly. Gratitude separates the truth of their message from the ugliness of its delivery. You honor the former and ignore the latter, and in doing so, you hold yourself above the fray while still addressing what matters. Think of the alternatives. If I had defended myself, explaining I had just adopted the dog, that I was trying my best, that he should have been more civil, we would have clashed. He would have hardened further, dug into his frustration. But by removing my defense entirely, I left him no place to strike. The fight ended before it began. That is Stoic strength, refusing to become what the other expects you to be. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And gratitude embodies that wisdom. While he shouted, "I thanked," While he struck with anger, I answered with calm. The contrast became undeniable. He lowered his guard because mine was never raised. Here's the inspiration hidden inside this practice. People often rise to meet the expectations we set. Treat someone as hostile, and they grow more hostile. Treat someone as reasonable, even when they are not, and many will rise to that level. It is the mirror effect of Stoic composure. Your calm forces them to see themselves clearly, and often they do not like the reflection. Gratitude becomes a silent teacher, so carry this with you. The next time criticism arrives, sharp and unkind, pause. Ask yourself, is there a truth here buried under poor delivery? If so, strip away the thorns and thank them for the seed. Let them see that you are secure enough to hear hard truths without breaking, that you are strong enough to stay open when others close themselves with anger. This is not surrender, it is mastery. It is the discipline to separate message from manner, to choose dignity over defense. And when you live this way, you will find that many who once seemed like enemies become unexpected allies. The same mouth that began with accusation may end with advice. The same hand that pointed in blame may offer help. Yet we must also acknowledge the limits. Some people are not softened by gratitude. Some arrive determined to provoke, no matter how gracefully you respond. They will not bend, they will not listen. And in those rare cases, when nothing seems to work, a final weapon remains, the silent pause, followed by a calm acknowledgement that leaves them exposed. That is where we now turn to the fifth and most powerful response of all. Entering the final chapter, imagine standing before a room filled with eyes, the air dense with attention, every word of yours weighed like gold. You are mid-sentence, explaining a vision you've shaped with care, when a voice slices through. A rival, threatened, smirks and throws poison into the open. I'm not sure we can trust advice from someone with such obviously limited experience. Maybe we should hear from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. The words strike, meant to humiliate, meant to break the rhythm of your presence. The room freezes, hearts tighten, all wait to see if you will burn. Now picture this. Your own pulse surges, your breath flares, the urge to list your victories, your credentials, every achievement you've earned. But instead, you do nothing. For 3 long seconds you let silence hang, heavy as iron. You lock eyes, unflinching, and only then, in a voice calm and steady, you say, "Thank you for that insight." The silence deepens. Their insult, which at first seemed sharp, now hangs like smoke, foul and undeniable. People shift in their seats, embarrassed not for you, but for the one who revealed himself. You spoke almost nothing, yet the entire room saw the truth. Here's where Stoic wisdom reveals its sharpest edge. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This response embodies that. You did not try to clean yourself with words, because you were never stained. You did not fight to reclaim respect, because respect is born from composure, not from noise. It wasn't my words that carried the weight. It was the silence, a stillness that turned their attack into their own undoing. I carry this memory from a business presentation years ago. My competitor thought he would cut me down before a committee, but it was his own mask that fell. Afterward, people came to me privately, not to question me, but to apologize for him, to praise the composure I had held. We won the contract, not because I shouted louder, but because I chose silence and let his words betray him. From here, understand this: silence is not emptiness, it is a mirror. It forces everyone in the room to look, not at you, but at the ugliness of the attack. Without silence, your answer may sound rushed, defensive, sarcastic. With silence, your answer becomes a judgment without judgment. It is the high road walked so visibly that no one can deny it. This response works best in public, when others are watching. Why? Because contrast is clearest when eyes are many. Their hostility becomes smaller against your calm. Their aggression loses meaning because you refuse to feed it. In that refusal, you show mastery, the rare kind of mastery the Stoics prized, control of self above all else. But do not mistake this for mockery. Your words must not drip with venom. Thank you for that insight must sound genuine, not sneering. The goal is not to humiliate, but to reveal. The aggressor unmasks himself. You only hold the mirror steady. The lesson is clear. Your calm will echo longer than any insult, because true strength does not shout, it endures. At this stage, the heart of Stoicism shines. We cannot rule the tongues of others. We cannot stop cruelty from being spoken, but we can always rule ourselves. And when we choose patience over retaliation, composure over fire, we prove to ourselves that no insult can dictate who we are. So remember this: sometimes the most devastating reply is not the sharp word, but the silent pause that leaves their own words ringing louder than they intended. And when you follow that pause with calm gratitude, you rise above the noise, untouchable. The 5 responses we have walked together share one truth. They do not give you control over others. They give you control over yourself. And in mastering yourself, you let others reveal who they are. That is the essence of Stoic power. Not to win arguments, but to keep your dignity no matter how others behave. These 5 responses share something far greater than cleverness. They reveal the quiet strength of a person who no longer lives as a slave to impulse. When you master the way you respond, you master the tone of the entire room. You no longer scramble to win arguments or prove your worth with louder words. Instead, you stand rooted in dignity and let others reveal who they truly are. That is the heart of Stoic wisdom. The goal is never to crush someone with your reply. It is not about silencing another voice so that yours rings louder. It is about choosing peace of mind over chaos, clarity over confusion, and grace over rage. When you learn to respond with calm strength, you do not just protect yourself in the moment. You build a reputation that follows you long after the words fade. People may forget what was said, but they will not forget how you carried yourself. The ancient Stoics taught that our reactions define us more than the insults we endure. An unkind word can wound, but it cannot shape you unless you allow it. Anger may flash like fire, but it burns out quickly. True strength is like a steady flame that cannot be blown out by the breath of another. Every time you choose composure, you affirm that your worth is not in their hands, but in your own control. If these responses gave you insight, consider subscribing so you can continue walking this path of inner discipline. And take a moment to comment with one word below: strength. Let it serve as your reminder that composure is the highest form of power. Carry this with you. Your responses are more than words. They are the proof of your character, the shield of your peace, and the mark of your true power. The journey is only beginning, and the next step will take you even deeper into living unshakably.